So the most unfortunate thing I probably see day to day in my business, my career, which is real estate, which you're really dealing with people's personal life, their financials, everything. Especially on the sell side more so. You see it more on the sell side. The unfortunate thing is seeing people's downfall, or their temporary downfall, hopefully for most people. I call this thing the black hole, and I'm going to get into it right now. In this black hole is all the enticing things when you're either up or more commonly when you're down. And what I mean by that, when things are going great and when things are going awful. More commonly, it is when things are going awful. You fall into that dark hole of enticing things. Best examples are alcohol and drugs, right? Sometimes people can't get over what they're dealing with, which is very common, and it happens to everyone. And they have to go towards something that can temporarily ease that pain. The most common things are probably deaths, relationship issues, maybe someone breaking up with another person, or financial circumstances. And then actually, now that I'm thinking about it, number 4 would be the people who you hang out with, right? I talk about this literally in every video I put in here. So it's deaths, financial circumstances, relationships, and then number 4 would be in your environment. If you change groups and you're from a really good group, people that aren't doing anything that is damaging themselves, and you start hanging out around the wrong people that damage themselves, and you start doing the same. And that's why I really do preach a lot of this stoicism, right? I had my really highs and my really lows. And when I was talking on this podcast this past week, I talked about there's a cognition I had where, number 1, being humble, that's a huge part. And being humble allows you to practice stoicism and never have an extreme high and never have an extreme low as well. So when something does happen, that's either good or bad, you never jump emotions too much. Because what happens is those jumping of the emotions triggers other things. It triggers other things. Because if you go too high, something bad happens. You go way too low, and then you start pulling in some bullshit, like some absolute bullshit, stuff that is just horrible. It's very difficult to come back from. So in real estate, you see it. Maybe there was one partner who cheated on the other person. That person who got cheated on, they end up selling the house. And, instead of being cause over it, which is difficult, I'm not saying it's not difficult, they go into a dark hole of maybe drinking or drugging or doing all this stuff that doesn't better the situation. And there's so many people, even at young ages, let's say 15, 16, 17, preparing to go to a D1 school because they're such a great athlete. Something happens, their egos go way too high, they start drinking, they think that they're, ultimately untouchable, and then they get a DUI. Right? Then they get a DUI. And then that college opportunity may be ripped away. I know people that this has happened to. I know people that were very set up for their 30s and 40s. And one mistake after not being stoic can cause such a low point that unless you can really ultimately focus on being cause, it can almost be unbearable to come back from it. So for me, number 1 is being stoic. Number 2 is to really be forgiving no matter what, right? Be forgiving no matter what, to some extent, right? If someone tries to kill you, okay, that's a different story. Like, you're just not going to hang out with that person, hopefully ever again, or be around that person. Hopefully that person gets, put behind bars or something, if, that calls for it. But, it's just unfortunate, man. You see people who are doing or could be doing so much better than they are, but they risk it, and eventually that risk, it's like you're really gambling to some extent. So when you are dealing with a really good point in your life, try, and I don't mean to not celebrate and have a good time, but try to keep it to a point that if something bad occurs after the fact, you're not going to be wiped out. And, your chemicals in your brain start going towards bad actions. I don't want to say really bad. Like drinking for some people, if you do it, I don't want to say professionally. If you do it with some restraint, it's okay. Me, myself, I've had previous circumstances, and I tried to minimize any, if any at all, for me personally. So I don't risk anything like that. But that's the thing. It's unfortunate because you see people who could be doing really well. They can't be cause over a situation when things go bad. So they get stuck in this hole. And it's the end of a lot of people. And that doesn't have to be the case. It shouldn't be the case. So moral of the story, try to be more stoic. If you're not humble, if you have a huge ego, try to put that in check because it's only going to hurt you yourself at the end of the day. And some people who have an ego don't have enough causation in themselves to come back from being humbled at the end of the day. So try to be stoic, try to humble yourself. Don't let that enticing dark hole pull you in. It happens way too frequently. And as long as you don't do anything bad per se or too risky, I think we're all pretty much set up for a decent life. That's what it comes down to. To be grateful for the fact that we're going to all be set up for a decent life, and as long as you don't risk it, you don't do anything bad, you don't do anything damaging to another person, you're gonna be fine. That's it. You're gonna be fine as long as you are leveled. That's it. Stay humbled. Don't be too egotistical, and be stoic.